What's up, guys? It's Spunkify here for League Top 10, and I am back yet again to talk about another champion from Riot Games. This time, a ranged DPS champion by the name of Vayne, the Night Hunter. It's a new 6300 IP or 975 RP ranged DPS champion. Now, I always welcome new ranged DPS champions, and I myself am not a huge ranged DPS champion player, rather. But I do find that I like Vayne quite a lot, and we'll talk about why, and we'll talk about if she's balanced in her items and what my overall impressions of her. But to start off with, let's go ahead and I wanted to talk about how she stacks up versus others who do her role, meaning other ranged DPS champions. To come to mind, we have Caitlyn, we have Misfortune, we have Ashe, we have Tristana. Those are ranged DPS champions that would fit in the same pool or category as Vayne. And how do they actually stack up against her? Well, the thing about Vayne is not focused primarily just on ranged DPS, but a certain form of ranged DPS. She, because of her W, which is Silver Bolts, does really well against DPS champions, melee in particular, who stack a lot of HP in order to bruiser their way into a team fight and do a lot of damage. This means that she's very good against players like Renekton, against Garen, against Olaf, ones that stack quite a bit of HP and then just go in and wreck face. The reason is because her Silver Bolts W takes 8% of the target's maximum HP, and that's not current HP, and actually provides it in true damage. So true damage versus magical damage or attack damage, what that means is it cannot be mitigated in any way. You cannot stack magic resist or armor in order to mitigate it. It's going to do that much damage every single time. So this is cause for much controversy, but I in fact welcome this because it actually moves the metagame away from tanky DPS and makes it more balanced. So on top of this though, this makes her a little different than the other ranged DPS champions who maybe sacrifice, of course, doing a lot of damage to really tanky champions, but instead bring other team utility. The thing with Vayne is she lacks any AoE rather damage. All of her damage is single target focus, which means that as a player of Vayne, you are going to be focusing one individual target pretty much the whole fight until that target dies, and then you're switching over another. Unlike Ashe or Caitlyn or Misfortune, you don't have any AoE damage in any way. So you are going to be focusing one target down until they die, almost like an assassin, and then switching. This means that in certain team comps, in certain situations, all the other ranged DPS champions would outperform Vayne, simply because they would be able to provide a stun, other team utility, or AoE damage in a clump team fight. But Vayne excels against, like I said, those tanky DPS champions, which makes her better or excel more in that role without the need of any additional items, whereas the other ranged DPS would have to build like a Madrid's in order to counter that, or some type of other black cleaver or armor penetration item in order to cut through that HP and armor. And like I said, Vayne has that built in right into her W and just synergizes that much more with other items of those types. So I definitely feel Vayne is in the same role as the other ranged DPS, but it has a more niche defined one comparatively. So with that in mind, I do want to talk a little bit about real quickly her range on her attacks. It's obvious that she is meant for melee DPS because not only because of her abilities, but because of the range of her attacks. Tumble, Silver Bolts, Condemn, all three of those abilities have a fairly short range. You know, her auto attack range is fairly standard for a ranged DPS, but Condemn has a short range. Although it fires far, it has a short range, and Tumble has a relatively medium to short range as well, allowing you to essentially reposition and hit people against walls. Unlike ones like Misfortune's ultimate or Ashe's ultimate or Tristana's range that, you know, multiplies when she ranks up or gets higher level, with Vayne, she doesn't have that liberty or that relative ease of doing long-range DPS attacks. She has to be pretty much up in your face, which makes her, of course, have to get closer to melee DPS, or rather makes it easier for her to get close to range melee DPS to do her full combo, which again moves her towards like a medium range DPS champion who excels against those type of people. But in return, she does more single target damage than all the other ones if she gets equally fed, in my opinion. So I do feel that she has the same role. I do feel she does it well, but I do feel her role is a little bit more niche comparatively versus the other ones against those certain targets. Now that I've talked about that a little bit, talked about how she stacks up, let's talk about what items, what builds, what runes, what masteries, what summoner spells. As far as summoner spells and masteries go, she would go a typical range DPS summoner build, which means that I usually take Flash and Ghost, which is a usual combination for range DPS champions. You want them to be mobile, you want them to be in the best position possible before you actually engage or during the engagement. So those two are no-brainers. As for range DPS masteries, you want to sacrifice you want to sacrifice any kind of resistance or armor, stuff like that, and pretty much put everything you have into your offensive tree. So you want to get the 5% extra damage bonus, you want to get the critical strike, you want to get the attack speed. You don't need the magic penetration on Vayne because she has no magical penetration abilities, but you want to get those things and really not have to sacrifice any of that. As far as utility goes, because you'll have a few points left over, I took the improved Ghost, I took the lower death timer, and I took the increased in experience. She doesn't really need the mana regeneration because her abilities are on a fairly low mana cost as it is, even at base ranks. So I felt that she would actually benefit more, obviously, from the increased experience rate, which she actually does. Now, during your actual laning phases, this will really assist you in being more of a harasser and really be mobile enough to actually get in there, do a couple of attacks, and then get out. She excels well in 1v1 situations when she's like in middle lane with her Q as her first rank of her abilities. You know, if you actually take Q first, you'll be able to go in, hit him with Q, and then go out and really do some great harassment. Typically speaking, champions in the middle lane are fairly squishy, and so with Tumble, you're able to harass very well and set up for a gank or set up for your own kill yourself. I really do enjoy Tumble getting Tumble as her first ability, and I feel that with the certain masteries that you go, that really will assist you that much more. As for your runes, what I went was armor penetration in red. I went armor in yellow to further assist me in my early game harassment, because with the armor you take less damage from auto checks from the opposing champion, and you take less damage from the minions if they decide to attack you and if they're around when you go into harass, meaning that you come out of the fight higher HP than you normally would without that. As for blues, I either took magic resist or attack speed. Now, depending on what you're comfortable with and how aggressive you're actually going to be, magic resist can be very essential to facing a AP type team, whereas the attack speed will get you a little bit more aggressive early on versus just overall, because you'll be able to get silver bolts off, the 3 attacks for silver bolts off, that much quicker. So magic resist and attack speed are your two of choice in my opinion. And then for HP quintessences, or rather quintessences, I just gave it away. HP is what I went because I don't like having my range DPS champions, even at low levels, really squishy. I want them to have a little bit more bulk, make them a little bit more not a target, or less of a target to actually attack, because usually you have that kind of initial instinct to attack the 4 or 5 bar target earlier on, rather if they're like 6 or 7 bar. So I like going HP quintessences on my range DPS champions, and that's what I went. You can go armor penetration if you'd rather like that, because that is a viable alternative if you feel you're comfortable with your HP levels with like a Doran Shield or Doran's Blade. Now, like I said before, she does well in middle lane by herself. She can take a 2v1, although I don't recommend it, simply because of the fact that she works well with someone paired up with her that can also stun or can help her get a target into position. Because she has no AoE damaging abilities, she can't push the whole tower or the whole minion wave away from her tower if she was 2v1ing, as well as harass the enemy champions without giving up possible gank opportunities on her. She works well with someone like an Alistar who can headbutt and stun, or a Poppy who can also stun into a wall, since they can automatically get the champion into position for her to then follow up with her condemn and stun yet again. So, with all this in mind here, she does well in team fights because of her W, because of the fact that it actually doesn't require any type of items for a W, and you always get that maximum of 8% HP at max rank. how do you actually build her item wise? With this all in mind, how do you actually build her item wise to face off against a wide variety of champions? Well, I'll tell you. First of all, Berserker Greaves are a great boots on her. Berserker Greaves are really good. They give you a lot of early game attack speed. If you want to sell them late game for Mercury Treads or what have you, cooldown reduction boots, you can do so. But early game, the actual attack speed off of them is really going to help you and really help you get silver bolts off that much quicker. That is your bread and butter skill, your silver bolts. Getting that off and getting that 8% HP off the target is extremely crucial and very necessary. Of course, you can start the game with whatever you want. I typically start with a Doran's Blade. You can, however, start with a Doran's Shield or something other than that, but I feel that those two kind of beef her up a bit and still make her a powerhouse. So building into Berserker Greaves is a great choice. From there, I usually went Madrid's Blood Razor. Madrid's is kind of like a no-brainer. It does 4% of the target's maximum HP on hit, which is magical damage, unfortunately, but it is totaling 12% of the target's HP theoretically on the third hit of silver bolts, as well as giving you some attack damage, helping you farm better, and giving you some attack speed. That is probably her number one item to get on her, and I really do feel it works simply great with her. Now, for my next one, I went a Stark's Fervor. Again, giving me more attack speed. Attack speed is probably her main stat on her. Most people would think it would be attack damage, but just because of the fact that silver bolts can never be dodged, can never be mitigated in any way, and you're always going to get 8% at max rank, having attack speed just brings that ability up much more. And if you face two Vaynes off together, I actually tested this, if you face two Vaynes off together, one of them building attack damage and one of them building attack speed, the one with attack speed will beat the one with attack damage simply because of her W. So it gives you lifesteal, gives everyone lifesteal in the team. Of course, you can swap that out if someone else goes it, but it also gives you that much needed attack speed. Now for my fourth item, Trinity Force is probably the best item in my opinion. It gives you HP, it gives you a slow, it gives you a sheen proc, and it gives you more attack speed and critical strike. All of this is stuff that she can use a lot, and it really makes her a little bit more bulkier, and it lets her chase down champions that much easier because she's great at chasing champions down, and it gives you that on-hit proc for that much more oomph in her abilities once she actually casts them, because a lot of times she's just going to be auto-attacking. Now, for my fifth offensive item, it's kind of up to you. I have here Black Cleaver, again, 30% attack speed, 55 damage, and it reduces armor. But depending on what you're up against, you may not need that armor penetration if they're primarily squishy champions. In fact, you can instead go something like the Sword of the Divine if you want to push towers. That's a great item. It gives her more attack speed, it gives her a active, and it allows her to tower dive and take out towers really fast. It makes it a great item on her. Those two, again, are just situational items. We have Black Cleaver or Sword of the Divine. It's up to you and what you're against. Build accordingly. Both ones work great though. But for my sixth item, I pretty much have a go-to defensive item, and that's Banshee's Veil. Because of the fact that she is a squishy range DPS champion and people are going to try to slow or shut her down with a stun, Banshee's Veil is invaluable. You're able to really use that to your advantage to get out of stuns, to get out of someone chasing you, and to reduce the magical damage you'll probably take from the AP champions attacking you. Vayne is highly susceptible to stuns and to magic damage champions who have a lot of burst damage, because of the fact that they can lock her down and completely shut her out of a fight, either by killing her or simply by kiting her around, and she can't really do anything about that. With Banshee's Veil, you're able to mitigate that some, and you're able to block that incoming stun that could possibly lead to your death. She's really good at chasing champions and kiting them and killing them, but when she's running away, because of the fact that her Q does not start its reset cooldown cycle until you attack after using Q, meaning for you, in order to have the cooldown start on Q again, you have to Q, attack a minion or attack a champion, and then Q again, making it very difficult to keep continuously queuing to get away. And Banshee's Veil will help you get away from that taunt or that stun or that slow that would lead to your demise. So Banshee's Veil is a great 6 item choice. I highly recommend that. So that rounds out all 6 of your items there for a total gold cost of roughly 1,700 gold. It's a good build. You can of course vary that a little bit, but I do feel that's probably one of her most optimum builds. Gives her a lot of attack speed, gives her attack damage, and gives her the nice Madrid's Blood Razor proc for a total of 12% of HP, which is crazy. That's simply incredible. You can do so much damage with that. Which actually brings me to my next point. Is she overpowered or is she underpowered? Well, I can definitely tell you that she is not underpowered in my opinion. I feel that she has a great role and she does not, fall short of that role in any respects. At the same time, I don't really feel she's overpowered because of her lack of AoE damage and because of the fact that other range DPS champions can outshine her late game in team fights since of the AoE initiation or other types of AoE type damage due to Ash's Arrow or Misfortune's ultimate. Just really, Vayne shuts one person down, specifically melee DPS down highly effectively. If anything, if they wanted to nerf anything on her, I'd say maybe nerf the early game mana cost of Tumble. That is a little bit too low in my opinion, because you can still use it, not really have to worry with any mana items. So nerfing the early game tumbling mana cost, meaning buffing it, making it more, making it a little bit more selective when you can actually use it, might be a good way to nerf her. Also maybe nerfing the maximum amount of HP that it takes off. 8% may seem like a little bit excessive. Perhaps going with 6% would be something more viable, something to lessen the sting just a bit on those tanky DPS, because when she has a lot of attack speed, it's that is just going off all the time and it's crazy. So maybe 6% and maybe a little nerf to the mana cost of Tumble. That's my opinion. I really feel overall she's very balanced. She's very squishy due to focus fire, any type of stuns like I said, and she is just a great champion overall in my opinion if you like playing ranged DPS champions. Keep in mind, if you don't like playing ranged DPS champions, you may not enjoy her. Well guys, this might have been my review of Vayne. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any comments or questions, please post them down below. I will get to as many as possible. If you are new to my channel, I do this for every single new champion that does come out. So feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed it. And I bring out other content besides this, obviously, for League of Legends. As always, guys, this has been Spunkify out. I'll see you later.